My name is Abigail, and I am 34 years old. Right now, I am sitting in a courtroom holding a brown envelope in my lap. My hands look calm, but inside my heart is racing like it might burst through my chest. Across the room, my soon-to-be ex-husband Derek sits with his expensive lawyer looking confident, almost smug. He thinks this is over. He thinks he can just walk away after 6 years of me paying for his medical school, supporting him, sacrificing everything. He treated me like I was disposable, like I was nothing. But he does not know what is inside this envelope. The judge is about to read it, and when she does, everything is going to change. Before we dive into what happened in that courtroom, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you have ever felt taken for granted by someone you loved, please hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened next was something nobody saw coming, especially not Derek. Let me take you back 8 years. I was 26, working as an accountant for a mid-sized firm in Portland, Oregon. Life was steady, predictable, maybe a little boring. Then I met Derek at a small coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. He was studying at a corner table surrounded by biology textbooks and notes. I remember thinking he looked so focused, so passionate about whatever he was reading. We started talking when I accidentally bumped his table and knocked over his coffee. I felt terrible, bought him a new one, and we ended up chatting for 2 hours. Derek told me about his dream of becoming a cardiologist. He wanted to help people to save lives. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about medicine made me feel like I was sitting across from someone truly special. He was not just ambitious. He was kind, thoughtful, and he seemed to genuinely care about making a difference in the world. We started dating a week later. Everything felt easy with Derek. He would pick me up after work and we would drive to the coast just to watch the sunset. We would stay up late talking about our futures, our hopes, our fears. He told me about his family, how his parents were retired and living on a fixed income, how they could not help him financially with medical school. He was worried he would have to give up his dream or drown in student loan debt for decades. After a year together, Derek got his acceptance letter from a prestigious medical school. It was everything he had worked for. But the tuition was staggering. $250,000 for 6 years. His face fell when he saw the financial aid package. It was not enough. He would need to take out massive loans, and even then he was not sure he could cover living expenses, books, and everything else. I remember the night he almost decided not to go. We were sitting in my apartment and he had tears in his eyes. He said maybe he should just work for a few years, save up, try again later. But I could see how much this meant to him. I could see his dream slipping away. So I made a decision that would change both of our lives. I told him I would help. I had been saving money for years, living frugally, building up a nest egg. I had a good job with steady income. I could support us both while he focused on school. At first, Derek refused. He said it was too much, that he could not let me do that. But I insisted. I told him we were building a future together, that his success would be our success. I believed in him completely. We got married 3 months before Derek started his first year of medical school. It was a small ceremony at the courthouse, just us, my mom, my younger sister Sarah, and 2 of Derek's friends. We could not afford anything fancy, and honestly, we did not need it. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. I was marrying someone I loved, someone with ambition and heart, someone who was going to make a real difference in the world. The first 2 years were beautiful in their simplicity. I worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. During the day, I was at my accounting firm, and 3 evenings a week, I did freelance bookkeeping for small businesses. I transferred $50,000 to the medical school each year for Derek's tuition. I paid our rent, bought our groceries, covered utilities, and made sure Derek had everything he needed for his studies. Derek studied constantly. He would come home late from the library, exhausted but determined. I would have dinner waiting for him, something simple but warm. We could not afford it to eat out, so I learned to cook meals that stretched our budget. Derek would tell me about his classes, about the patients he observed, about the incredible things he was learning. Those conversations made everything worth it. On weekends, when Derek had a few hours free, We would do small things together. We would walk through the neighborhood, make breakfast together, or watch old movies on our laptop. Derek would give me shoulder massages after my long days, telling me I was his angel, that he would make it all up to me someday. He would say, once he became a doctor, we would have the life we dreamed of. I believed every word. I gave up opportunities for myself during those years. My company offered me a promotion that would have required relocating to Seattle. It came with a significant raise and better benefits, but I turned it down because Derek needed stability. He needed to stay in Portland for school, and I would not leave him. I also put my own dreams on hold. I had always wanted to get my master's degree in accounting, maybe even become a CPA. But there was no time and no money for that. Everything went to Derek's education. My sister Sarah worried about me. She would visit and see how thin I had gotten from stress and working constantly. She would see the dark circles under my eyes. One evening after Derek had gone to bed early, Sarah pulled me aside in the kitchen. She asked me quietly, "Are you sure he appreciates all this? Are you sure he sees everything you are doing?" I defended Derek immediately. I told her he was just focused on his studies, that medical school was incredibly demanding, that he showed his appreciation in small ways. I told her she did not understand what it was like to support someone's dream. But I could see the doubt in her eyes. She hugged me and said she just wanted me to be happy to be taken care of too. I brushed off her concerns. Derek was working towards something important. He was going to be a doctor. He was going to help people, and I was helping him get there. That was enough for me. At least that is what I told myself every time I felt a small flicker of doubt, every time I felt invisible in my own life. Year 6 arrived, and Derek finally graduated from medical school. The graduation ceremony was held in a large auditorium filled with proud families. I sat in the audience wearing a dress I had bought on sale 5 years earlier because I still could not afford to buy new clothes. I watched Derek walk across that stage in his white coat, and I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost hurt. We did it. All those years of sacrifice, all those sleepless nights, all those moments of doubt. It had all led to this. But when Derek gave his speech as one of the top students in his class, something felt wrong. He thanked his professors for their guidance. He thanked his classmates for their support. He thanked the medical school staff for their dedication. He talked about his journey, the challenges he overcame, the late nights studying, the pressure of exams. But he never mentioned me. Not once. He did not thank me for paying his tuition, for working 2 jobs, for giving up my own dreams. I was not even an afterthought in his moment of triumph. I told myself he was probably nervous that public speaking made him forget things, that it did not mean anything. After the ceremony, Derek was surrounded by his classmates and their families. Everyone wanted to congratulate him, take photos, celebrate. He waved me over, but it felt like an afterthought, like I was just another person in the crowd. We took one quick photo together, and then he was pulled away by his friends who wanted to go out for drinks. Derek invited me to come along, but his tone was flat, distracted. I went anyway, hoping we could celebrate together. But at the bar, I sat quietly. While Derek and his medical school friends talked about their residency placements, their upcoming interviews, their excitement about finally becoming real doctors. I tried to join the conversation a few times, but they would smile politely and then turn back to their medical talk, using terms and referencing experiences I could not relate to. I felt like a stranger at my own husband's celebration. Derek started his residency at a prestigious hospital 2 months later. He was placed in the cardiology department, exactly what he had dreamed of. I was so happy for him. But his schedule became brutal almost immediately. He worked long shifts, sometimes 36 hours straight. He would come home, collapse into bed, and sleep for 12 hours. When he was awake, he was either eating quickly or getting ready to go back to the hospital. I understood that residency was demanding. I tried to be supportive, to give him space, to not complain about how little time we spent together. But slowly things started to change in ways that made my stomach twist. Derek stopped asking about my day. He stopped thanking me for making dinner or doing his laundry while he slept. The small gestures of appreciation that had kept me going through the hard years just disappeared. One evening, I made his favorite meal pot roast with roasted vegetables. I spent 2 hours preparing it, wanting to do something special for him. Derek came home looking exhausted. He sat down, ate quickly without really tasting anything, then pushed back from the table and said he needed to sleep. No thank you. No acknowledgement. He just stood up and walked to the bedroom like I was a servant, not his wife. But what really started to hurt was the way Derek began talking about my job. We were having breakfast one Saturday morning, one of the rare times we were both home and awake at the same time. I mentioned that I was working on a complex audit at work, and Derek barely looked up from his phone. He said accounting is something anyone can learn, right? It is not like surgery or medicine. You just follow formulas. I felt like he had slapped me. I stared at him, waiting for him to realize what he had just said, waiting for an apology. But he just kept scrolling through his phone, completely unaware that he had just dismissed 6 years of me supporting him, plus my entire career. I said quietly, "I have been doing this job to support us, to support you." He glanced up, shrugged, and said, "I know and I appreciate it, but now that I'm a doctor, maybe you should think about upgrading yourself. Maybe take some courses, get a better position, something that fits with my career." I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked him what he meant by that. Derek sighed like I was being difficult. He said that as a doctor, he would be attending events, hospital galas, conferences. He would be around other physicians, surgeons, medical professionals. He needed a wife who could hold her own in those circles, someone who understood the medical world, someone who could network and make connections. He said it like it was reasonable, like he was giving me helpful advice. I told him I had given up my career advancement for him, that I had turned down promotions and opportunities so he could finish school. Derek leaned back in his chair and said, "That was your choice, Abigail. I never asked you to do that." Those words cut deeper than anything else. He was rewriting history, pretending like I had not sacrificed everything for him, like it was all just my decision, and he had nothing to do with it. After that conversation, the distance between us grew wider every day. Derek started staying at the hospital even when he was not on call. He said he needed to study to review cases to learn from senior doctors. But I started noticing he was going to a lot of social events too. Hospital fundraisers, medical conferences, happy hours with other residents. And he stopped inviting me. When I asked why I could not come with him to a hospital gala, Derek said you would be bored. It is all medical talk. You would not know anyone. Trust me, it is better if I go alone. I felt my heart sink. I was his wife, but he was treating me like I was an embarrassment, like I did not belong in his new world. I started seeing photos on social media from these events. Derek smiling with groups of young doctors and nurses. There were women in elegant dresses standing close to him in group photos. One woman appeared in multiple pictures, always near Derek. She had dark hair, a confident smile, and in every photo, she and Derek looked comfortable together, like they shared inside jokes. I felt sick looking at those images. I tried to talk to Derek about how I was feeling, but every conversation ended the same way. He would tell me I was being too sensitive, too needy, too insecure. He said I should be happy for his success instead of trying to hold him back. I was not trying to hold him back. I just wanted to feel like I mattered, like the 6 years I spent building his dreams still meant something. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. Derek had said he would be working late, another overnight shift. I decided to organize some files on our shared tablet, looking for a receipt I needed for taxes. When I opened the tablet, a messaging app was still logged in. I did not mean to snoop. I truly did not. But I saw a name at the top of the recent messages, JL, and the preview of the last message made my blood run cold. It said, "Last night was amazing. I cannot stop thinking about you." My hands started shaking. I opened the conversation, and what I saw destroyed me. Months of messages between Derek and someone named Jessica Lawrence. They were not just friendly. They were intimate, romantic, explicit. Derek telling her how beautiful she was, how much he enjoyed their time together, how she understood him in ways I never could. Jessica responding with equal enthusiasm, talking about their future together, about trips they wanted to take, about how excited she was that he was finally going to leave his wife. I sat on the couch reading message after message, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. There were messages from 3 months ago, right around the time Derek started being cold to me. He had been planning this, carrying on this affair while I was still working to pay off the last of his expenses, while I was still cooking his meals and doing his laundry, and believing in our marriage. One message from Derek said, "I know I need to end things with Abigail soon, but I want to wait until after my contract is finalized. I do not need the drama affecting my career." He was talking about me like I was a business problem to solve an inconvenience to manage. Jessica had responded, "I understand, take your time. Just know that I am here waiting for you." I could not breathe. I sat there until 2 in the morning reading every message, seeing proof that my husband had been living a completely different life. He had been taking Jessica to the same restaurants where we used to go when we could afford it. He had been telling her things about our marriage, private things, making me sound like a burden he was stuck with. When Derek finally came home at 6 in the morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the tablet in front of me. He walked in looking tired, starting to say something about his shift, but then he saw my face. He saw the tablet, and he knew. I asked him very calmly, "Who is Jessica Lawrence?" Derek froze. For a moment he looked like he might try to lie, but then his face changed. The guilt disappeared, replaced by something harder, colder. He said, "How dare you go through my private messages? That is a violation of my privacy, Abigail." I could not believe he was trying to make this my fault. I stood up and said, "You have been cheating on me. You have been planning to leave me. And you are angry that I found out." Derek ran his hand through his hair, pacing the kitchen. He said, "Look, I did not want you to find out this way, but yes, I am seeing someone else. Someone who actually fits into my life now." I felt like he had punched me in the stomach. I asked him about the 6 years I paid for his education, the sacrifices I made, the life I put on hold. Derek stopped pacing and looked at me with eyes that seemed like a stranger's. He said, "You helped me, and I am grateful for that, but that does not mean I owe you my entire life. I have changed, Abigail. I have grown. I need someone who is on my level now, someone who understands the medical world, someone who can keep up. You are just an accountant. You cannot give me what I need anymore." Those words hit me like physical blows. Just an accountant. Like my work meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. I asked him about Jessica. He said she was a doctor, a new attending in the cardiology department. She understood his work, his stress, his ambitions. She moved in the same circles, knew the same people, could actually contribute to his career, instead of just existing on the sidelines. I asked if he loved her. Derek shrugged and said, "I do not know yet, but I know I do not love you anymore. Maybe I never really did. Maybe you were just convenient when I needed help." I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. I refused to give him the satisfaction. Derek said he was going to file for divorce. He had already talked to a lawyer. He wanted to split assets 50-50 and move on quickly. He said it like we were dissolving a business partnership, not ending an 8-year relationship. I asked where he had been staying. He admitted he had been sleeping at Jessica's apartment most nights for the past month. All those overnight shifts had been lies. Within 3 days, Derek moved all his belongings out of our house. He hired movers while I was at work, so I came home to find half the furniture gone, his closet empty, no note, no explanation. Just gone. Like our entire marriage had been erased. I called Sarah that night and cried for hours. She drove over immediately and stayed with me for a week. She held me while I sobbed, brought me food when I could not eat, sat with me in silence when I could not talk. She kept saying, "He does not deserve you, he never did." But that did not make the pain any less. I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek with Jessica laughing at me, talking about how I was not good enough. I lost 12 pounds in 2 weeks because food tasted like cardboard. I could barely focus at work. My boss noticed and gently suggested I take some time off, but I could not afford to. I needed the routine, needed the distraction, needed to feel like some part of my life was still normal. I kept asking myself how I had been so blind. How had I not seen the signs earlier? How had I let myself be used like this? I felt stupid, naive, worthless. I had given this man everything, and he had thrown me away the moment I was no longer useful. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that I did not know how I would ever trust anyone again. 2 months after Derek left, I received the official divorce papers. I sat in my lawyer's office, Linda Thompson, a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She read through the papers and her expression grew more disgusted with each page. She looked up at me and said, "He is asking for half of everything." After what he did, I explained the whole story to Linda. How I had paid for Derek's medical school, supported him for 6 years, sacrificed my own career. Linda listened carefully, taking notes. When I finished, she asked the most important question anyone had asked me in months. She said, "Do you have any proof? Any documentation of the money you gave him?" I nodded and pulled out a folder I had brought with me. Inside were 6 years of bank statements showing wire transfers to the medical school, each one for $50,000 per year. I had copies of tuition bills with my account information on the payment receipts. I had emails from Derek thanking me for the payments messages where he promised he would pay me back someday, texts where he acknowledged I was funding his education. But then I pulled out something else, something I had almost forgotten about. In the first year when Derek and I were newly married, and I was about to make that first huge tuition payment, I had been nervous. It was a massive amount of money, and even though I loved Derek, some small practical voice in my head told me to protect myself. So I had asked Derek to sign a promissory note. It was a simple document typed up and notarized. It stated that Derek acknowledged receiving $300,000 from me over 6 years for his medical education. It stated that this money was a loan, not a gift. And it included a clause that said if we divorced within 10 years of his graduation, he would be required to repay the full amount plus 5% interest per year. At the time, Derek had signed it willingly. He had even joked about it, saying of course he would pay me back if anything ever happened, but nothing would happen because we were forever. He signed it in front of a notary, made it official, and then we had both sort of forgotten about it. It had been sitting in a fire-safe deposit box for 6 years. Linda's eyes lit up when she saw that document. She said, "This changes everything. This is a legally binding contract. He graduated 2 years ago, which means you are still well within the 10-year window. If the judge recognizes this, he owes you $330,000. That is the original $300,000 plus 5% interest per year for 2 years. I felt a small spark of something I had not felt in months. Not quite hope, but something close to it. Linda said she would use this in court, that Derek's lawyer probably had no idea this document existed. She asked if I was ready to fight. I looked her in the eye and said, "I have never been more ready for anything in my life." The court date was set for 6 weeks later. During that time, Derek tried to contact me several times through his lawyer. Howard Sterling, a slick man in expensive suits who specialized in quick, clean divorces. Sterling sent messages saying Derek wanted to settle out of court, that we should just split assets and be done. Linda told me not to respond. She said Derek was nervous, that he probably suspected I had something but did not know what. I spent those 6 weeks preparing mentally and emotionally. Sarah helped me pick out a professional outfit for court. My mother called me every day to make sure I was eating, sleeping, taking care of myself. They both said they were proud of me for standing up for myself, for not just letting Derek walk all away. The night before the court date, I could barely sleep. I kept going over everything in my mind. What if the judge did not accept the promissory note? What if Derek found some loophole? What if I had to watch him walk away with half of what little I had left? But then I would remember his face when he called me just an accountant. I would remember him saying maybe he never loved me. And I would feel that spark of anger that had been growing inside me, giving me strength. The morning of the hearing, I put on a navy blue suit, pulled my hair back, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked different than I had 2 months ago. Thinner, yes, but also harder somehow. Stronger. I picked up the brown envelope containing all my documentation, the promissory note sitting right on top, and I drove to the courthouse. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more like a conference room with wood paneling and a judge's bench at the front. Derek was already there with Sterling sitting at one table. He looked good, rested, like the last 2 months had been easy for him. He was wearing an expensive suit I had never seen before, probably bought with his new doctor salary. He glanced at me when I walked in, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, annoyance. I could not tell. Then I saw her. Jessica was sitting in the back row wearing a cream-colored dress, her dark hair perfect. She was there to support Derek, to watch him finalize his divorce so they could start their life together. Seeing her in person made my stomach turn, but I kept my face neutral. I would not give either of them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. Judge Margaret Sullivan entered, a woman in her mid-60s with silver hair and a stern expression. Everyone stood, and then the hearing began. Sterling spoke first, laying out Derek's position. He said this was a straightforward divorce between two people who had grown apart. He emphasized that Derek and I had been married for 7 years, that in a marriage spouses support each other financially, and that any money I gave Derek for school was part of normal marital obligations. He argued that assets should be split evenly, that Derek was entitled to half the value of our house, half the savings account, everything divided right down the middle. Linda stood up, and I could hear the steel in her voice. She said this was absolutely not a straightforward case. She explained how I had worked 2 jobs for 6 years, paying $300,000 for Derek's medical education, while he contributed nothing financially to our household. She explained how Derek had waited until he became a successful doctor before suddenly deciding I was not good enough for him anymore. She called it calculated, exploitative, and unconscionable. Sterling objected, saying those were inflammatory characterizations. Judge Sullivan told him to sit down and let Ms. Thompson finish. Linda continued, explaining that I had documentation of every payment proof that Derek had acknowledged the financial arrangement. Then she said the words that made Derek's face go pale. She said, "Your Honor, my client has a promissory note signed by Mr. Derek Hammond stating that the money provided was a loan to be repaid under specific circumstances." I watched Derek lean over and whisper urgently to Sterling. Sterling looked shocked, clearly hearing about this for the first time. Judge Sullivan said she wanted to see the document. Linda walked over to me, and I handed her the brown envelope. My hands were steady now. I felt calm, focused. This was it. Linda opened the envelope and pulled out the promissory note. She handed it to Judge Sullivan, who put on her reading glasses and began examining the document carefully. The courtroom was completely silent. I could hear Derek breathing heavily from across the room. Sterling was flipping through papers frantically, probably trying to find some precedent or loophole. Judge Sullivan read slowly, her expression growing more serious with each line. She looked at the notary stamp, checked the date, verified the signatures. Then she looked up at Sterling and said, "Counselor, were you aware of this document?" Sterling stood up and admitted he was not, that his client had not disclosed it during their preparation. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. She said, "That is unfortunate." She turned to Derek and asked him directly if that was his signature on the promissory note. Derek stood up, his face flushed. He said yes, but he tried to explain that it was just a formality, that we had been married, that he never thought it would actually be enforced. He said it was not fair to hold him to something he had signed years ago under different circumstances. Judge Sullivan cut him off. She said, "Mr. Hammond, a legal document does not stop being legal just because you find it inconvenient. You signed this in front of a notary. You acknowledged receiving $300,000 for your medical education. You agreed to repay terms if your marriage ended within 10 years of graduation. Your marriage is ending 2 years after graduation. The terms are clear." Sterling tried to argue that the money was a gift between spouses, that marital funds cannot be treated as loans retroactively. But Linda was ready. She pulled out emails and text messages where Derek explicitly referred to the money as something he would pay back, messages where he acknowledged Abigail was funding his education as a separate contribution, not as shared marital expense. She showed messages where Derek thanked me for lending him the money using that specific word, lending. Judge Sullivan reviewed everything carefully. She asked Linda what the current amount owed would be with interest. Linda said, $300,000 principal, plus 5% simple interest per year for 2 years, equals $30,000 in interest, bringing the total to $330,000. Derek jumped up and said he could not possibly pay that much, that he was just starting his career, that it was unreasonable. Judge Sullivan looked at him coldly and said, "You are a doctor now, Mr. Hammond. You have a substantial income. You will make payments." Then the judge did something I did not expect. She started speaking directly about the situation, not just the legalities. She said, "I have been a family court judge for 23 years. I have seen many cases of one spouse supporting another through professional school, only to be abandoned once that spouse achieves success. It is one of the most painful betrayals I witness in this courtroom." She looked at me and said, "Mrs. Hammond, or Ms. Abigail, if you prefer. You sacrificed your own career, advancement, worked 2 jobs, and invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into your husband's future. You did this out of love and partnership." She looked at Derek, and her voice grew harder. "Mr. Hammond, you accepted this support, benefited immensely from it, and then discarded your wife the moment she was no longer useful to you. You even had the audacity to criticize her career, the very career that funded your success." Sterling tried to object, but Judge Sullivan held up her hand. She said, "I am not finished." She continued, "This promissory note shows that Ms. Abigail had the wisdom to protect herself financially even while trusting you emotionally. That foresight will now serve her well. This court recognizes the promissory note as valid and enforceable." Judge Sullivan then delivered her ruling. Derek was ordered to repay the full $330,000 within 2 years in monthly installments. The house, which had been purchased primarily with my savings, would remain mine. Derek would not receive any share of it. The savings account, which contained about $40,000, would also remain with me as it represented money I had saved while supporting Derek. Derek would be responsible for his own legal fees and mine. The judge added one more thing. She said that given the clear evidence of Derek's affair and his dismissive treatment of his wife's contributions, she was awarding me additional compensation for emotional distress in the amount of $20,000. Sterling objected strongly, but the judge overruled him. She said Mr. Hammond presented himself as a loving husband while secretly planning to leave his wife for another woman. That constitutes intentional infliction of emotional harm, and this court will not reward such behavior. Derek's face was bright red. He looked like he might argue further, but Sterling put a hand on his arm, stopping him. The judge asked if there was anything else. Linda said no. "Your Honor, that is everything." Judge Sullivan banged her gavel and said, "This court is adjourned. Divorce is granted. Terms will be executed as stated." I sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. It was over. I had won. Not just legally, but morally. The system had seen what Derek did and called it what it was: exploitation and betrayal. I felt Linda's hand on my shoulder, heard her say, "You did it. We did it." Derek stood up quickly, knocking his chair back. He grabbed his briefcase and strode toward the exit without looking at me. But I saw Jessica in the back row, her face pale and confused. She had just realized that her new boyfriend was now $350,000 in debt and had a reputation as someone who used and discarded his wife. I wondered how long their relationship would last now that Derek was not the successful, debt-free doctor she thought she was getting. Linda and I walked out of the courtroom together. In the hallway, I saw Derek standing near the elevators, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was raised, stressed. I could hear fragments of the conversation. He was talking to someone about loans, payment plans, how he was going to manage this debt on top of everything else. Jessica was standing a few feet away from him, looking uncomfortable, like she was not sure if she should approach him or give him space. As Linda and I passed them, Derek saw me. For a moment, our eyes met. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something. But what could he say? He had called me disposable. He had said I was just an accountant who could not keep up with his life. And now he was paying for those words, literally paying for them. I did not stop walking. I did not say anything to him. There was nothing left to say. Linda and I stepped into the elevator, and as the doors closed, I saw Jessica walk away from Derek, heading toward the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator with him. That small detail told me everything I needed to know. She was already distancing herself. She did not sign up for a boyfriend with massive debt and a reputation for abandoning the woman who built him up. When we got outside, Sarah was waiting by her car. She had taken the morning off work to be there for me, even though she could not come into the courtroom. The moment she saw my face, she knew. She ran over and hugged me tightly. I hugged her back, and for the first time in months I cried. But these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of vindication, of finally feeling like I mattered. Linda gave me her card and told me to call if I needed anything else. She said she had handled hundreds of divorce cases, but this one would stick with her. She said I was brave for standing up for myself, for not letting Derek rewrite history and walk away clean. She shook my hand firmly and said, "You are going to be just fine, Abigail. You are stronger than you know." Sarah drove me home. We did not talk much during the drive. She just held my hand across the center console, squeezing it every few minutes to remind me she was there. When we got to my house now, we made tea and sat on the couch. Sarah said, "So what happens now? What do you want to do next?" I thought about that question. For 6 years, my life had revolved around Derek's needs, Derek's dreams, Derek's career. For the last 2 months, my life had revolved around pain and betrayal. But now, for the first time in a very long time, I could think about what I wanted. I could make plans that were just for me. Over the next few weeks, I heard things through mutual acquaintances. Derek had to take out a substantial loan to start making the court-ordered payments to me. He picked up extra shifts at the hospital, working nights and weekends to cover the debt. His relationship with Jessica fell apart within a month. Apparently, she could not handle the stress of being with someone who was financially struggling and emotionally bitter. She transferred to a different hospital to avoid the awkwardness. Some of Derek's colleagues heard about the divorce and the circumstances. The medical community is smaller than people think, and word spreads. A few people who knew both of us reached out to me privately, saying they had always thought Derek seemed entitled, that they were not surprised by what happened. One older doctor who had mentored Derek even called me to apologize. He said he had noticed Derek talking dismissively about me at hospital events and should have said something. He told me I deserved better. I did not take pleasure in Derek's struggles. I am not that kind of person. But I also did not feel guilty. He had made his choices. He had treated me like I was nothing, and now he was facing the consequences of that cruelty. That was not my fault. That was justice. I used the money from the divorce settlement to pay off the last of my own debts. For the first time in nearly a decade, I was completely debt-free. I had my house, my savings, and a fresh start. I signed up for a master's degree program in accounting that I had always wanted to pursue. Classes started in the fall, and I felt excited about school in a way I had not felt since before I met Derek. I also started taking better care of myself. I joined a gym not to lose weight, but to feel strong again. I started cooking meals I actually enjoyed, instead of whatever was cheapest and fastest. I redecorated my house, getting rid of furniture that reminded me of Derek, and filling the space with things I loved. I painted the bedroom a soft sage green, and bought new bedding that felt luxurious. I hung art that made me smile. I made the house mine. Sarah helped me through the harder days. There were still moments when I felt the sting of betrayal, when I questioned whether I had been a fool to trust Derek so completely, but Sarah would remind me that trusting someone is not foolish. Betraying that trust is the problem, and that was Derek's failing, not mine. She would say you loved someone with your whole heart. That is beautiful. He is the one who could not appreciate it. I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with during the years of working constantly and supporting Derek. We started having regular dinners, going to movies, taking weekend trips to the coast. I remembered what it felt like to laugh freely, to have conversations that were not about medical school or Derek's stress or how tired he was. I remembered what it felt like to be seen and valued for who I was, not just for what I could provide. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a promotion at work. My boss had noticed how focused and driven I had become. He said I had a new energy, a new confidence. He offered me a position as senior accountant, with a significant raise and better benefits. I accepted immediately. For the first time in my life, my career was moving forward on my terms. 2 years passed. I completed my master's degree with honors. I changed jobs again, this time to a position as financial director for a nonprofit organization that provided healthcare to underserved communities. The work was meaningful, challenging, and I loved it. I was making more money than I ever had, and I was doing something that mattered. One afternoon, I was sitting in a coffee shop working on my laptop when someone approached my table. I looked up and saw Derek standing there. He looked older than the last time I had seen him. There were lines around his eyes, gray patches in his hair that had not been there before. He was thinner, his face drawn. He asked if he could sit down for a minute. I hesitated but nodded. Derek sat across from me, not quite meeting my eyes. He said he had just made his final payment on the debt. He was done, $350,000 paid off in 2 years through brutal work schedules and sacrifice. He said he wanted me to know he had fulfilled his obligation. I said I had received the payments, that I was aware he was done. There was a long silence. Then Derek said something I had not expected. He said I was wrong. About everything. The way I treated you, the things I said, leaving you for someone else. I was wrong. I did not respond immediately. I just looked at him, this man I had once loved so completely, this man who had shattered my heart and my trust. He continued, Jessica, and I did not last. Obviously. And even after her, there were other relationships that did not work out. I kept thinking it was about finding the right person, someone on my level, someone who fit my life. But I realized recently that the problem was me. He said he had been going to therapy, trying to understand why he had acted the way he did. He said his therapist helped him see that he had felt inferior to me, even though I never made him feel that way. He said that when he became a doctor, he finally felt like he had value, and instead of being grateful to me, he resented me for reminding him of when he had nothing. He tried to erase that part of his life by erasing me. Derek said you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it because I was selfish and insecure and stupid. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not even deserve to ask for that. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost, and I am sorry. I am so sorry, Abigail. I sat there absorbing his words. A part of me, a small part, felt validated hearing him admit he was wrong. But a larger part of me felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no desire for revenge or reconciliation. Just a quiet neutrality. I realized that Derek no longer had power over my emotions. He was just a person who used to be important to me, but was not anymore. I said thank you for apologizing. I know that was not easy. He nodded, looking hopeful, like maybe this was the start of some kind of reconnection. So I added gently but firmly, but I have moved on, Derek. I do not hate you. I do not think about you very much at all anymore. I hope you find peace and figure out whatever you need to figure out. But we are done. We were done 2 years ago. Derek's face fell slightly, but he nodded. He said, I understand. Then he asked, Are you happy? I smiled, a real genuine smile, and said yes. I am happier than I have been in a very long time. He looked at me for a moment like he was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. He said, You look different. Stronger. I said, I am. We said goodbye and Derek left the coffee shop. I watched him walk away, and I felt a sense of closure I had not known I needed. He had acknowledged what he did. He had apologized. and I had accepted it without taking him back into my life. That felt powerful. That evening I called Sarah and told her about running into Derek. She asked how I felt. I told her I felt free. She said, "Good, because you deserve to be free. You deserve to be happy. And you are." I could hear the smile in her voice, and I felt grateful for her, for my mother, for all the people who had stood by me when my world fell apart. Now, at 36 years old, I am building a life I am proud of. I have a career I love, a master's degree I earned through hard work, a house that is truly mine, and friendships that are deep and real. I am not looking for a relationship right now, but I am open to the possibility someday. And when that day comes, I will know exactly what I deserve. I will know my worth. Looking back, I do not regret loving Derek. I do not regret supporting his dream or helping him become a doctor. Those experiences taught me about myself, about my capacity for love and sacrifice. But they also taught me about boundaries, about protecting myself, about not losing myself in someone else's ambitions. I learned that you can be generous and kind without being a doormat. I learned that love should be reciprocal, that partnership means both people lifting each other up, not one person carrying all the weight while the other climbs. I learned that the people who truly value you will show it through their actions, not just their words, and certainly not just when it is convenient for them. Most importantly, I learned that my worth is not determined by whether someone else recognizes it. Derek could not see my value, and that was his loss, not my failure. I see my value now. I see everything I accomplished, everything I survived, everything I built from the rubble of a broken marriage. And I am proud of that woman looking back at me in the mirror. The brown envelope that changed everything is now in a filing cabinet in my home office, a reminder of the day I stood up for myself. I do not look at it often. I do not need to. I carry the lesson with me every day. I am not disposable. I never was. And I never will be again. So here is what I want you to take from my story. If you are in a relationship where you are giving everything and receiving nothing, where you are building someone up while they tear you down, please know that you deserve better. Protect yourself. Value yourself. Do not be afraid to stand up and demand the respect you have earned. And if you have been through something similar, if you have been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, please know that it does get better. The pain fades. The anger softens. And one day you wake up and realize you are happy again, maybe even happier than you were before because you know yourself better now. You know what you will accept and what you will not. And that knowledge is power. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a way that scared you? Have you ever felt taken for granted and found the courage to change that? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss future stories. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that they are not alone, that standing up for yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you find the strength to value yourself the way you deserve to be valued always. Take care of yourselves, and remember you are never disposable. Your worth is inherent, and no one can take that away from you unless you let them. Stay strong, stay kind to yourself, and keep moving forward. You have got this.